Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling something that feels incredibly familiar, almost dangerously so. It's a word we use every single day to describe our friends, our bosses, our dates, even our pets. We're talking about you. Or, more specifically, we're talking about personality.
It really is. It's one of those topics where every single person on Earth
Hmm.
feels like they're a qualified expert,
Yeah.
just by virtue of being alive.
Yeah.
We all have one, and we all judge others based on theirs.
We absolutely do. I was just thinking about this on the drive, and we throw this word around so casually. We say, oh, Sarah, she has a terrific personality, which, usually means she's fun and easy to talk to.
Right, it's a shorthand.
Exactly. Or we say, he has a terrible personality, which is basically code for, I never want to share an elevator with that man again. It's our shorthand for social survival. But when you actually stop and, peel back the layers, what are we talking about? Is it a vibe? Is it a checklist of habits? Is it your soul?
It's so deceptive in its simplicity. We treat personality like it's a solid object, like a kidney or a femur bone. There's my personality sitting right there.
Yeah.
But scientifically, it's incredibly complex to pin down. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands.
Okay.
If we look at the source material we have for today, which is this massive, comprehensive overview of the entire history of personality psychology, we find that even the heavyweights, the geniuses of the field, struggled to agree on a single, unified definition.
That actually makes me feel a lot better about not knowing what it is.
It should.
Yeah.
But if we try to synthesize the views, psychologists are generally referring to a unique, relatively enduring cluster of characteristics that influence behavior.
Okay, I want to stop you right there on that phrase. Relatively enduring. I really got stuck on that when I was reading through the research. It feels like a hedge, like the scientists are afraid to commit.
It is a hedge, but it's a necessary one. Think about it. If your personality changed completely every time you walked into a different room, if you were a loud extrovert in the kitchen and a weeping poet in the hallway, and then, I don't know, a ruthless dictator in the living room, you wouldn't really have a personality, would you?
No, you'd have chaos. You'd be unrecognizable.
It would be unrecognizable, exactly. There has to be baseline. But at the same time, you aren't a statue. You change over time, you adapt to situations. So relatively enduring is the sweet spot. It implies stability.
And that stability, you're saying, has huge consequences.
Oh, it's high stakes.
Yeah.
This isn't just about whether you're funny at parties. Your personality, it really defines the boundaries of your success, your life fulfillment, your marriage, even your health.
That's the part that kind of scares me. You're saying my personality isn't just a description of me, it's a prediction of my future. Like, my conscientiousness score might determine if I live to be 80.
Precisely. That's not an exaggeration. It's the invisible architecture of your life. It shapes who you marry, what career you choose, how you handle stress, and yes, even how long your heart keeps beating.
Wow. Well, no pressure then. Let's back up a tiny bit to the word itself. Because the sources we have today brought up the etymology, and I found this just fascinating. I think a lot of us assume personality comes from a word meaning person or human.
Right, that's the logical assumption, but it's wrong.
It comes from the Latin word persona,
Persona, exactly.
which didn't mean inner soul or true self. It referred to the theatrical mask worn by actors in a play.
Which raises an immediate and, frankly, uncomfortable question, doesn't it?
It really does.
If the root of the word implies a mask, are we talking about who we really are? Or are we talking about the role we play for other people?
That is the tension. I feel like we spend our whole lives trying to find ourselves, but the very word for what we're looking for suggests we're just finding a better mask. So is personality the public face, or is it the person hiding behind it?
The answer, according to the research, is it's both. And that's what makes it so hard to study. It includes the external impression we make, that visible aspect of our character, the mask, but it also encompasses the subjective, invisible social and emotional qualities that nobody else can see.
So it's the mask and it's also the face beneath it.
It's the mask and the face, and you can't really pull them apart.
So our mission for this deep dive is to try and peel back that mask a little. We're going to move beyond just the dictionary definitions. We're going to look at the forces that actually shape who we are.
And we have quite a roadmap laid out. We're going to start by looking at how the digital world, social media, specifically, acts as a kind of modern mirror for personality.
The digital mirror, I like that.
Then we're going to explore how culture, race, and gender drastically alter the lens through which we view human nature. Because, as we'll see, a quote-unquote healthy personality in New York looks very, very different from a healthy personality in Tokyo.
And then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how scientists actually measure this stuff. Because how do you measure something you can't touch? How do you put a ruler to character? And trust me, some of these tests are bizarre.
They are. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the big philosophical questions that underpin all of this. Free will versus determinism, nature versus nurture.
It's the small stuff.
That's the small stuff, yeah.
All right, let's jump into the deep end. Section 1, the digital mirror, personality and social media.
This is a massive area of modern research for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much of our lives online now, interacting in these virtual realities. So the big question is, do we present our real selves on social media?
My gut instinct, and I think the instinct of a lot of our listeners, is to say, no way. Not a chance. Everyone is faking it. We all know that person who posts the "my life is perfect" #blessed photo on Instagram, but we know for a fact they just had a screaming match in the car 5 minutes ago. It's a highlight reel. We're curating this glossy magazine cover version of our lives.
That is the common skepticism, absolutely. We assume everyone is performing. But the research data actually contradicts that narrative in a really surprising way.
Oh, how so?
Studies conducted in both the United States and Germany suggest that, for the most part, social media profiles generally convey accurate personality impressions.
Wait, really? You're telling me that what I see on Facebook is real? The
Yep.
influencers are telling the truth?
In terms of broad personality traits, yes. When researchers compare someone's online profile to how they act in face-to-face interactions, they find they're remarkably similar. If you're an extrovert in real life, your profile looks extroverted. If you're open to new experiences offline, your profile tends to reflect that.
So you're not necessarily becoming a different person when you log on.
You're just
You, but
digital. So the idea that we're all just imposters online is a myth.
for the most part, yeah. Now, there is some nuance. For example, some of those German studies did find a tendency for people to present themselves as more emotionally stable than they really are. Ah, okay. The "I'm totally fine, everything is great" filter, I know that one well.
That's the one. We might polish the rough edges of our anxiety or sadness. We don't usually post selfies of our panic attacks. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this contradicts the faking it theory even more. It's what the researchers call the introvert exception.
The introvert exception. Okay, break that down for me.
The research indicates that people who are introverted, neurotic, or maybe just socially awkward are often more likely to express their true selves online than in person.
Okay, that's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Let's play this out. Imagine a guy named Gary. Gary is a classic introvert. If I meet Gary at a loud, crowded networking mixer, what am I seeing?
You're seeing Gary in survival mode. He's standing in the corner, maybe checking his watch. He's holding a drink like it's a shield. If you try to talk to him, he's giving you one-word answers.
He's inhibited.
Completely inhibited. He is masking his true thoughts because the social pressure is just way too high.
Right, so I walk away thinking Gary is boring, or Gary is shy and has nothing to say.
Exactly. But then Gary goes home, he puts on his comfortable clothes, he opens his laptop and logs into a Reddit forum about, say, vintage sci-fi novels.
And suddenly, Gary is unleashed.
Suddenly, Gary is writing these 2,000-word essays. He's funny. He's passionate. He's debating people from all over the world. He's sharing these deep opinions. The barrier of physical presence is completely removed.
So, ironically, the person posting that long, detailed rant on a forum might be revealing more of their genuine personality there than they would if you took them out for coffee.
For them, the internet isn't a mask. It's a megaphone. It allows the inner self to come out in a way the real world doesn't.
That completely flips the script. For a huge chunk of the population, the real world is where they have to fake it, and the digital world is where they finally get to be real.
Precisely.
Okay, let's talk about the visual side of this. The selfie. We have to talk about the selfie.
The cultural phenomenon of our time, yes.
Is there a clear correlation between how many selfies you post and your personality type? Because the stereotype, of course, is that it's pure narcissism.
And in this case, the stereotype has some pretty solid scientific backing. The research findings detailed in our text show that narcissists, and by that we mean people with an inflated, unrealistic self-concept who crave admiration, they do tend to update their status more frequently
Okay.
and post significantly more photos of themselves.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
I know, it's not the most surprising finding, but there's a social cost that comes with it. The same research shows that excessive selfie posting correlates with being perceived by others as less likable.
Less likable.
Yeah, and it can actually reduce the intimacy of your friendships. It sends a signal that you're more focused on appearance than connection.
So you're getting the likes, but you're losing the love.
That's a great way to put it. And interestingly, the data consistently shows women tend to post more selfies than men, though the why behind that is a whole other debate about societal pressures and appearance standards.
Okay, now we have to touch on the darker side of internet personality, the trolls.
Yes, the underbelly of the web.
I feel like everyone has dealt with a troll at some point, someone who just jumps into the comments section with the sole purpose of burning the whole house down. Is there a clear psychological profile for these people? Or are they just, bored teenagers?
It's much darker than just boredom. And we're not just talking about someone who's annoying or has a strong opinion. We are talking about people who deliberately harass, degrade, and upset others for fun.
Right, for sport.
Exactly. The profile is predominantly male, with an average age around 29. And what drives it, according to the research, are high scores in the dark tetrad of personality, specifically a trait called sadism.
Sadism, that's a heavy word. That's usually reserved for, serial killers in movies.
It is a heavy word, but it fits the clinical definition. Sadism, in a psychological context, means deriving actual pleasure-real psychological gratification from inflicting pain or distress on others.
So they aren't arguing because they believe in their point. They are arguing because your anger, your frustration, actually makes them feel good.
Correct. It's a specific pathology manifesting in a digital space. The internet provides this low-stakes environment to exercise that sadism without any real-world consequences, like getting punched in the face.
That's chilling. It really reframes how you should react to them. You can't win an argument with someone whose victory condition is just you getting upset.
Exactly. The only winning move is not to play.
So we've talked about how our personality shows up online. But does it go the other way? Does social media actively change who we are over time?
The feedback loop.
Yes.
And the news here is, well, it's concerning, particularly for mental health.
Give it to me straight.
There was a massive study of teenagers in China, ages 13 to 18. It found that excessive time spent on the internet, and this was defined pretty clearly, resulted in significantly higher levels of anxiety and depression compared to teens who spent less time online.
And we're seeing this in the West, too, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. High levels of usage are consistently linked to reduced psychological well-being. But there's a specific finding regarding college students and loneliness that I found fascinating because it really highlights the difference between connection and communication.
Oh, tell me more.
The study found that students who use social media like texting or direct messaging to talk to their parents reported feeling lonelier than those who use the phone to talk to their parents.
That is so specific. Why the phone? What's the magic of the phone?
Think about the data stream. Text on a screen is just information, it's words. But a voice carries nuance, emotion, tone, the little pauses. It carries the presence of the other person. The digital interaction, while it's efficient, it lacked the emotional nutrition of hearing a human voice.
So it's like eating empty calories. You feel like you've eaten, but you're actually malnourished.
That is a perfect analogy. And in extreme cases, excessive use is linked to addiction, which the research suggests actually alters portions of the brain that are linked to depression and irritability.
So it's physically changing the brain. It's not just a bad habit.
Potentially, yes. It creates this vicious cycle where you use social media to alleviate loneliness, but the nature of the interaction leaves you feeling lonelier, so you use it more, which makes you feel worse, and so on.
Okay, that's a sobering thought. I want to zoom out a bit. We've been looking at the screen, but now let's look at the map. Because one of the biggest points in our source material is that our entire understanding of personality has a massive, massive blind spot.
The weird bias.
I love this acronym, WEIRD. Break it down for the listeners.
It stands for Western, Educated, Industrialized, Rich, and Democratic.
Basically, us. Or the people who have historically been studied by psychologists.
Exactly. For about 100 years, the entire history of personality theory was built by white, European, or American men, studying other white, European, or American men.
And white rats. Can't forget the rats.
And white rats, yes. We can't forget the rats.
So we have these grand theories that were presented as universal truths about human nature. But they are actually just truths about a very specific, very small, and frankly, very privileged slice of the world.
Exactly. We treated Western psychology as human psychology. But when you apply a cultural lens, everything shifts. The biggest and most fundamental divide is between individualism and collectivism.
This is the I versus the we.
That's the perfect way to frame it. Western cultures think the US, Australia, much of Europe, they emphasize personal freedom, independence, the individual self. The goal of life is to find your unique path, to stand out from the crowd.
Be your own person, be the main character.
Yes, but in many Asian, African, and Arab cultures, broadly speaking, the emphasis is on the group, on collective norms, on family obligations. The we. The goal isn't to stand out, it's to fit in, to maintain social harmony.
And this actually changes what makes people happy.
Fundamentally, in individualistic cultures, happiness correlates very strongly with personal choice, with extroversion, with high self-esteem. I did this my way. You're happy when you achieve something for yourself.
And in collectivistic cultures.
Happiness often comes from fulfilling the expectations of others and contributing to the group's success.
Can you give me a concrete example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Take Asian American students. Research suggests their well-being and life satisfaction are often deeply tied to satisfying their parents' expectations for them. Now, in a Western therapeutic framework, a psychologist might look at that and say, oh, that's stifling, that's unhealthy. You need autonomy, you need to cut the cord.
Right. Live your own life.
But in that cultural context, satisfying the parents isn't a burden. It's a source of genuine pride and satisfaction in family harmony. It's a different path to happiness.
That's a huge paradigm shift. It means we can't just judge someone's mental health by our own cultural yardstick.
You absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
And this extends to how we view ourselves. North Americans, for example, are famous for what's called self-enhancement.
We like to think we're awesome.
You really, really do. We consistently tend to rate ourselves as above average on almost everything. Driving ability, intelligence, kindness, you name it. If you ask a room of Americans, are you a better than average driver? 80% of the hands go up.
Which is mathematically impossible.
Completely impossible. But in Japan and China, students tend toward the opposite. Self-effacement or self-criticism.
So they rate themselves lower than average.
Yes, or they're much more likely to focus on areas where they need improvement. They see themselves as not good enough yet and in need of more work.
Now, in the U.S., we'd call that low self-esteem. We'd try to fix it. We'd send them to a workshop on positive affirmations.
Exactly. We would pathologize it. But in those cultures, it's not a pathology, it's a virtue. It's about humility and not elevating yourself above the group. If you think you're better than everyone else, you become a threat to the harmony of the whole.
The text mentioned this Nordic concept that I found absolutely fascinating. Janteloven.
Ah, yes. Janteloven. It sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, doesn't it?
It totally does. But it's a cultural code, a set of unwritten rules.
It is. It's a set of cultural rules, particularly in places like Norway and Denmark. It essentially translates to something like, you are not to think you are special. You are not to think you are better than us. Do not think you are smarter than us.
Wow. That is the absolute anti-American dream. We tell our kids from day one, you can be anything, you're a star, and the Danes are basically saying, sit down, you're just like everyone else.
In a way, yes. But again, you have to flip the lens. To an American, that sounds oppressive. It sounds like tall poppy syndrome, cutting down anyone who succeeds too much. But inside the culture, it creates a tremendous sense of equality and modesty. And the data bears it out. Norwegian students show much less self-enhancement than Americans.
So it really challenges the idea that believing in yourself and thinking you're the best is the only healthy way to be.
It suggests there are many, many ways to be a functional, happy human. It just depends on the cultural water you're swimming in.
What about concepts like fate or destiny?
This is another huge point of divergence. In many Hindu and Buddhist cultures, the concept of karma plays a massive role. Events are often seen as preordained or as the direct result of actions in past lives. This can lead to a more passive or accepting personality type.
The it is what it is philosophy.
Right. Versus the dominant Western view of, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. If things are wrong, I must fix them. I must hustle and grind.
So is this all nature or is it nurture? Are Asian babies just born more collective or are they taught this from day one?
The source material is very clear.
Yeah.
It's both, and they feed each other. It starts with child rearing. U.S. parents tend to be more permissive and democratic. What do you want for dinner, Timmy? We ask the child for their opinion constantly.
We're training them to have and to voice their preferences.
Right. Whereas many Asian and Arab parents are often more authoritarian and controlling in their style.
Which, again, through a Western lens, we might judge as harsh or stifling.
But the children in those cultures often don't see it that way. They interpret it as care. They see it as guidance. My parents love me enough to show me the correct path. But here is the kicker, and this is where it gets really wild. It's not just upbringing, it's biology.
What do you mean?
Cultural neuroscience, which is a fascinating new field, is showing that Western and Eastern brains actually light up differently when they're responding to the exact same visual stimuli.
Wait, hold on. Their brains are physically different.
The pathways of attention and processing can be shaped and reinforced by culture. Brainwave activity differs. So culture isn't just a software we run. It helps wire the hardware from a very early age. If you spend 20 years looking at the world as a we, your brain physically adapts to process information that way.
That is mind-blowing. It means culture goes so deep. It's not just customs and holidays. It's our cognitive architecture.
Precisely.
Okay, that feels like a good place to transition. Let's move into section 3. We've talked about what personality is and where it comes from. Now, the million-dollar question, how on earth do we measure it?
Assessment. The practical side of things.
Because you can't just put a dipstick in someone's ear and check their introversion level like you check the oil in a car.
It would certainly be easier if we could. Psychologists have to rely on two golden rules for any test they create: reliability and validity.
Okay, break those down for me.
Reliability is just consistency. If you step on a bathroom scale today and it says you weigh 150 pounds, and then you step on it 5 minutes later and it says 200 pounds, your scale is garbage. It's not reliable.
Got it.
A personality test has to give you similar results over time. If you take a test on Monday and it says you're an introvert, and you take it again on Tuesday and it says you're an extrovert, the test is useless.
Okay, that makes sense. And validity.
Validity is the big one. It means, does the test actually measure what it claims to measure? You can have a very reliable test. Let's say I decide to measure your head circumference with a tape measure. I'll get the same number every time. It's super reliable. But if I claim that that number tells me how smart you are...
It's not valid.
Exactly. It's a perfectly valid measure of hat size, but it's an invalid measure of intelligence.
Got it.
Yeah.
Reliability is consistency. Validity is accuracy.
Yeah.
So what's a gold standard test? What do the pros use in a clinical setting?
The big one, the absolute monster of the field, is the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory.
It sounds like a weapon system from the military.
It kind of is. It's the beast of personality testing. It consists of 567 true or false statements.
567. That's not a test. That's an interrogation. That must take hours.
It does. It takes a long time. And the questions can be, well, they can be eclectic.
Give me some examples. What kind of things are they asking?
They ask things you'd expect, like, I often feel tense at work, which is normal. But then they ask very specific physical things like, I frequently have stomach cramps, or I sometimes feel a tight band around my head.
Why are they asking about stomach cramps? Is this a personality test or a physical exam?
That's the brilliance of it. They aren't actually looking for gastritis. They're looking for patterns of somatization people who express their mental stress as physical pain, or they're looking for hypochondria. It's a backdoor way of getting at your psychological state.
Okay, but here's my problem with any of these self-report tests. If I'm taking this for a job interview or a custody hearing or something with high stakes, I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna make myself look like Mother Teresa.
You can certainly try, but the MMPI is smarter than you are. It has built-in lie detectors.
How does a paper test detect a lie? That sounds like science fiction.
It has what are called validity scales. For example, there's the L scale, or the lie scale. It asks you to agree with statements about behaviors that are technically good, but are practically impossible to do 100% of the time. Things like, I read every editorial in the newspaper every single day, or I never get angry.
And if I answer true to that,
You're lying. Nobody reads every editorial. Nobody never gets angry. If you answer true to too many of those saintly questions, the test flags you. It produces a report that basically says, this person is faking good. The results are invalid.
but it knows.
It knows. It also has scales to catch if you're faking bad, maybe trying to look incompetent to get disability payments. It even has scales that check if you're answering carelessly, just checking true blindly all the way down.
So it's playing 4D chess while I'm playing checkers.
In a way, yes. It's objective and highly valid, but the downsides are clear. It's incredibly long, it's expensive to administer and score, and it's very invasive.
Okay, now let's talk about the fun stuff. The ink blots. This is what we all see in the movies.
The projective technique.
This feels like classic old-school movie psychology. You show me a blob of ink, I tell you it looks like a bat, and you tell me that means I secretly hate my mother.
That is the caricature, for sure. But the theory behind it comes directly from Freud. The idea is that the stimulus, the ink blot, is intentionally ambiguous. It has no inherent meaning. So any meaning you see in it must come from inside you. You are projecting your unconscious fears, needs, and conflicts onto the ink.
And this is the famous Rorschach test.
Developed by Herman Rorschach. And here's a fun fact that proves the universe has a strange sense of humor. His childhood nickname was actually Klecks, which is German for inkblot.
You're kidding me. It was his destiny. He was born to do this.
It really seems so. He was obsessed with them. He experimented and eventually created the 10 standard ink blots we use today, and that's it, just 10. He actually couldn't afford to print more because color printing was so expensive back in 1921.
So the big question, does it actually work? Is it reliable? Is it valid?
That is the heart of the controversy. Is it reliable? Not really. Two different psychologists might look at your answer and interpret it completely differently. One might say, he sees a bat. That's a common normal response. Another might say, he sees a bat, a creature of the night, which reveals he feels threatened and anxious.
And validity.
Also very debatable. Its validity is much, much lower than something like the MMPI. But it's still widely used in clinical settings, not so much as a diagnostic tool, but as an icebreaker.
So it's more of a conversation starter than a scientific ruler.
Exactly. It's a way to lower patients' defenses. If I ask you directly, are you depressed? You might just say no. But if I show you a picture and you tell me it looks like a lonely bird with a broken wing dying in the rain, well, now we have something to talk about.
That makes sense. There's another one mentioned in the sources, the TIAT, the thematic apperception test.
Right. Instead of abstract ink, the TIAT uses pictures. They're vague, ambiguous scenes. A man and a woman standing by a window, a young boy looking at a violin. And you have to tell a story about the picture.
What is happening here? What are they thinking? What's going to happen next?
Exactly. And if your story is he's plotting his revenge versus he's planning a surprise party for her, that tells the psychologist something about your underlying drives. It's very useful for measuring things like the need for achievement or the need for affiliation or hidden aggression. It pulls the story out of you.
There's one more method mentioned that sounds really modern, thought sampling.
This is a way of moving the assessment out of the artificial clinic setting and into real life. It involves using technology, it used to be beepers, now it's smartphones, to randomly prompt people throughout their day to record their mood and thoughts in real time.
So instead of asking me, how are you feeling last month, which is subject to all kinds of memory bias, it catches me in the actual act of living.
Right. Your phone buzzes at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. What are you thinking right now? Rate your happiness from 1 to 10. One study of Japanese students used this method and found that repetitive nighttime thoughts, obsessing over things right before bed, was a direct predictor of sleep issues. It captures the real texture of daily life that a one-time test might miss.
It's like a movie of your personality instead of just a single snapshot.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so we've measured the mind, but now we have to circle back to that weird bias we talked about. Because if the tests themselves, the MMPI, the TAT, were built by white men for white men, what happens when we use them on everyone else?
And that brings us to Section 4, the bias in the system. This is absolutely critical. Using a single culturally blind standard for everyone can lead to, and has led to, dangerous misdiagnoses.
Let's look at Asian Americans again as an example.
We mentioned before that in many Asian cultures, there's a cultural view that mental disorder is shameful. So they're much less likely to report depression or sadness on a standard survey. They won't check the box that says, I feel blue.
So on paper, they score as healthy.
Or they report the distress in a different way. They use somatization. They express that emotional distress as physical pain.
Like the stomach cramps and the tight band around the head that you mentioned from the MMPI.
Exactly. A patient might go to a doctor and complain of a down heart or severe back pain or chronic fatigue. A Western doctor might run a million physical tests, x-rays, blood work, find nothing wrong, and then say, it's all in your head, completely missing the severe depression because the patient isn't using the right psychological words.
That is tragic. It's like a language barrier, but for symptoms.
It is, and it leads to massive underdiagnosis and lack of treatment. Now let's look at African Americans. On standard tests like the MMPI, Black populations have historically scored higher on scales measuring things like paranoia and mistrust.
Which, to a clinician, sounds like a pathology. If a doctor sees a high paranoia score, their mind immediately jumps to mental illness.
Right. But is it actually paranoia? The expert interpretation now is that this isn't paranoia in the clinical delusional sense.
Yeah?
It is a realistic, adaptive, and frankly healthy response to perceived discrimination and systemic racism.
Of course. If people are actually out to get you, or if you know the system is rigged against you, then being mistrustful isn't a sickness, it's survival.
Precisely. If I walk into a store and I am consistently followed by security because of the color of my skin, being mistrustful is a rational response to my lived experience. If a test doesn't account for the reality of racism, it will pathologize a normal human reaction.
That is such a crucial distinction. What about Hispanic populations?
High collectivism is a key factor again. There was a fascinating study on police officers that found Hispanic officers showed significantly higher rates of PTSD than their black or white counterparts.
Wow, why would that be?
The leading theory is that the job of policing can be incredibly isolating, and it often severs ties to one's community, because Hispanic cultures often place such a high value on that collective support system. The family, the neighborhood losing it or being cut off by the nature of the job, you're a cop now, you're not one of us anymore, makes them more psychologically vulnerable to trauma. The isolation hits them harder.
And finally, what about gender bias in all of this?
Women are diagnosed with depression and anxiety far more often than men. The numbers aren't even close.
And the question is that biology or is it bias?
That is the eternal debate. Is it prevalence? Do women actually suffer more from these conditions? Or is it a bias in the system? We know doctors are more likely to identify emotional problems in women and prescribe psychotropic meds. We also know that women are more likely to admit they're struggling and actively seek help.
Whereas men are often socialized to just man up.
Exactly. Man up and mask their depression with anger or alcohol or workaholism. So the official statistics are almost certainly skewed by who actually walks into the clinic and what they're willing to say.
It seems like the big takeaway here is context is everything. You cannot just look at a test score in a vacuum. You have to look at the person and their entire cultural world.
Absolutely. A test score without cultural context is just a number, and often a very misleading one.
So how do researchers gather all this data in the first place? Let's move to our next section, Section 5, the research methods. We've got the case study, the experiment, and the correlational method.
Think of these as the basic toolkit for a personality psychologist.
The case study is the classic Freud approach, right? The deep dive on one person.
Yes. The clinical method.
Yeah.
You take one person, like Freud's famous patient Katharina, and you go incredibly deep. You reconstruct her past. You analyze her dreams. You try to find the root trauma that explains her current problems.
It makes for a great story. It reads like a detective novel.
It absolutely does. But the huge limitation is subjectivity. Memories are notoriously unreliable and can be distorted. And more importantly, you can't generalize from one person to all of humanity. Just because Katharina had anxiety because of a specific childhood event doesn't mean everyone with anxiety had that same event.
Freud saw sex everywhere because Freud was looking for sex everywhere.
Essentially, yes. So to get more scientific, to prove actual cause and effect, we need the experimental method. This is the gold standard. This is where you actually manipulate variables to see what happens. The most famous example in our text is Albert Bandura and the Bobo doll experiment.
Oh, I love this experiment. It's so visual and a little bit creepy. Paint the picture for us.
So Bandura wanted to know if aggression is innate, if we're just born violent, or if it's learned. So he took a Bobo doll, one of those big inflatable clowns with sand in the bottom so they bounce back up when you hit them.
Terrifying things.
Very. He had a group of young children watch an adult in a room with the doll. And the adult just beat the stuffing out of it. The adult punched it, kicked it, hit it with a hammer, and yelled aggressive things like "pow" and "kick him."
And then they let the kids into the room with the doll.
And the kids went to town on the poor clown. They imitated the adult's aggression almost perfectly. They used the little hammer. They kicked it. They yelled the same words. A control group of kids who hadn't seen the adult be aggressive just played nicely with the doll.
So it proved that behavior isn't just innate, it is learned by observation.
It proved that watching violence can directly cause violent behavior in children. That's the power of an experiment. You can prove that X causes Y.
But you can't experiment on everything. I mean, you can't take a group of babies and lock them in a closet for 10 years just to see if they get depressed. That's horrifyingly unethical.
Exactly. We have very strict ethical boundaries. So for those kinds of questions, we have to use the correlational method. We just look for relationships that already exist in the real world without us interfering.
Like the relationship between shyness and self-esteem.
Right, Sarah. We can survey thousands of people and find that, yes, high levels of shyness correlate with low levels of self-esteem. But, and this is the cardinal rule of statistics that should be tattooed on every researcher's brain, correlation does not equal causation.
The chicken and the egg problem.
Exactly. Does being shy cause you to have low self-esteem? Maybe. Does having low self-esteem make you shy? Also, maybe. Or is there a third factor, like having critical or rejecting parents, that causes both shyness and low self-esteem?
We see this mistake in news headlines all the time. New study finds people who drink wine live longer.
Right. But maybe people who can afford to drink wine regularly are just wealthier and have better access to healthcare and less stressful lives. The wine isn't saving them, the money is. The correlational method tells us what things go together, but it can never tell us why.
The source material also mentioned a new player in research, the virtual revolution.
Ah, yes. Amazon Mechanical Turk.
This sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel.
It's basically crowdsourcing for research subjects. Instead of trying to drag 20 psychology undergrads into a lab on campus, I can post my survey online and pay thousands of people from all over the world a small fee to take it.
So it's faster, it's cheaper, and you get a much more diverse sample of people.
Yes, all of those are huge advantages. But there's a downside. Are these people actually paying attention? Or are they watching Netflix while randomly clicking agree on everything just to get the 50 cents?
The distracted subject problem.
It's a very real problem. It's a trade-off. You get a massive quantity of data, but you have to be really, really careful about the quality.
We're coming into the final stretch here, section 6, the philosophical questions. Because after all the data, all the Bobo dolls, and all the ink blots, we're left with the really big stuff.
The questions that keep philosophers and psychologists up at night.
You mentioned something to me earlier on our prep that I thought was brilliant, the idea of the theorist's autobiography.
This is a meta point that I just love. When you read these great sweeping theories of personality, Freud, Jung, Adler, Skinner, you have to realize that they are often, in a way, disguised autobiographies.
They were just writing about themselves.
To a large extent, yes. Freud had a very strict authoritarian father and a lot of his own sexual anxieties, so he built a theory of human nature centered on strict fathers and sexual anxiety. The theory is often a beautiful, elegant explanation of their own lives. We just have to be careful not to mistake one man's diary for the universal blueprint of all humanity.
That's a really humbling thought. So what are the big universal questions they're all trying to answer in their own way?
Well, the first and foremost is free will versus determinism. Are we the captains of our souls, or are we just complex biological puppets acting out a script written by our genetics and our past experiences?
This brings us back to that idea of historical determinism you mentioned. And I'll be honest, the idea that my personality was basically set in stone by the time I was 5 years old, it kind of depressed me.
Why did it depress you?
Because it suggests that the adult me is just the toddler me, with a credit card and a better vocabulary. It feels like it removes the possibility of real change.
It is a terrifying thought for many people. That view suggests the cement dries very, very early. If you are a fearful, clingy child, you're overwhelmingly likely to become an anxious, security-seeking adult. The core remains.
So if I want to change, if I want to be more outgoing or less neurotic or more conscientious, am I fighting a losing battle against my own history?
You're fighting a hard battle, but not necessarily a losing one. This is where the whole nature versus nurture debate has finally landed. The modern consensus is that it's not one or the other. It's an interactionist view. It's always both.
How does that work in practice?
Think of your genetics as the factory setting on a machine. It gives you a range. Maybe your biological introversion range is a 6 to a 9 on a 10-point scale. You will probably never be a 2. You will never be the life of the party, table dancing extrovert. It's not in your wiring. But where you fall within that 6 to 9 range, whether you are a functional happy 6 or a paralyzed miserable 9, depends entirely on your environment, your choices, and your self-awareness.
So the mask can be repainted?
The mask can be repainted, it can be remodeled, you can learn new skills, but the fundamental clay underneath, that stays pretty much the same.
That's weirdly comforting. It means I don't have to become someone else entirely. I just have to be the best version of the person I already am.
Precisely. And that connects to the last big debate, optimism versus pessimism. Are humans basically good creatures, striving for growth and self-actualization? That's a humanist view. Or are we just tension-reducing animals, constantly trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure?
I'd like to believe we're growing. I hope we are.
The research supports that we can grow. But it requires effort. It requires looking at the mask, understanding it, and then choosing how to wear it.
So let's bring it all home. We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We certainly have. We've seen the personality as this relatively enduring thing. It's stable, but it also interacts with the situation you're in.
It's the mask and it's the face, and you can't have one without the other.
It's shaped by our biology, by the culture we live in, whether that's individualist America or collectivist Japan, and increasingly by our digital environments online.
And measuring it is an imperfect science, fraught with cultural bias, but it's still the best tool we have to understand ourselves and others.
Knowledge is power. Understanding your personality and all the forces that are shaping it gives you a little bit more of that free will we were talking about. If you know why you react the way you do in certain situations, you gain the power to choose to react differently next time.
I want to leave our listeners with that final provocation you mentioned earlier, that final thought experiment.
Right. So think about this for yourself. How much of who you are today, your anxieties, your ambitions, your sense of humor, was already fixed in place before you even started kindergarten? And here is the real test. If you were to pick up and move to a completely different culture tomorrow, someplace with totally different values, a different language, different social rules, would you still be you? Or would the mask have to change so much that eventually the face underneath changes too?
That is definitely something to chew on while you're scrolling through your own social media feed tonight. Observe your own mask this week. See which one you're wearing.
And ask yourself who or what is wearing it.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.